Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the program. A very good day to you, wherever you're watching us from. This is Smart24 TV, where we drive your business, and my name is Anthony, your host. Now, it's a new week and the last day of the month of October, and we're very thankful that we can be able to see this new day. To God, of course, for keeping us safe and helping us to see another month come to pass. Now, this show is one that brings you latest information and updates and insights into the financial markets around the globe, on the continent as Africa, and in the region in East Africa, particularly in Uganda, helping you also learn and support some of the investment opportunities within the markets themselves and be able to make yourself some bit of extra income, that passive income coming in, of course, from the different segments of these markets. Now, as it is a Monday, of course, we always want to look at what happened on the Friday markets as we wound up the week last week, and also look forward a little bit into what we should expect in the new week and the new month, of course, as we start the new month tomorrow. Now, let's also get to be informed that Altex East Africa is one that brings you this show, and it's a #1 private stock exchange, helping you access different financial instruments across East Africa. And now with their partnership with MTN Uganda, they are giving you opportunity to invest with the help of your mobile phone without even need to access the internet. You can now buy shares, you can also buy bonds and even sell bonds on the market, that is in the secondary market, at Altex East Africa by simply dialing *292#. And when you do this, between 15 minutes past the hour of 8 and 15 minutes past the hour of 3 p.m., you will be able to see the different financial instruments. That is the bonds in particular for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, name it. So long as they're found in East Africa, they have got you covered. And when you do so, you will be able to buy and sell with other traders on the market at Altex East Africa. And also remember, this chance almost can also be given to you at Airtel. Now, you can simply do the same at *292#, and you will be able to access the markets as well. Now, the Altex markets also give you a chance to buy exchange traded funds. Now, these are structured in order for you to buy shares or equities across a given maybe segment or sector or exchange as a whole, rather than buying individual shares of different companies on the stock exchange. So Altex is helping you also buy some exchange traded fund with a very good return as well on that exchange traded fund. Check out Altex online as well. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome with a company missing Wall Street's expectations on the top and bottom lines. But the biggest headlines included a $400 million miss by the YouTube ad revenue, a slowdown in Google Cloud platform revenue, and a net income that came up to $5 billion short of last year's numbers. Shares of such giants were down by 6% on the weekly performance analysis. Microsoft, which also reported earnings early on Tuesday, the company beat analysts' expectations on the top and bottom lines, but its intelligent cloud segment, however, fell year over year, from 31% to 20%. When you look at also its all-important Azure cloud platform growth, meanwhile, fell from 50% to 35%. The company is still in some watchers' eyes set up to win in the long term. When you look at some of the comments from different people, of course, financial analysts and so on, they are looking at better tech company performance week ahead, and also looking at this week. Nevertheless, Microsoft just didn't look all that great to investors, and it was the company's outlook for Azure that seemed to sting the worst, with the tech giant predicting that its Azure business growth will decline another 5% in the current quarter. That is the fourth quarter, which is the last quarter of the year. Microsoft shares were off 3% for the week as of midday Friday trades. And of course, several other companies like Amazon are also following suit within the same category. Looking at the indexes there that closed the tradings on Friday, particularly the big indexes like S&P 500, we had the S&P 500 appreciate about 93.76 points to close at 3,901.06 points, which was a 2.46% appreciation in the day's trades. The Dow, which is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which has the top 30 companies in the US, had about 828.52 points added to its value, closing at 32,861.80. That was a 2.59% on its daily gains there. The Nasdaq index, which is for the tech companies, appreciated the most. The second biggest appreciation, with about 309.78 points, going up to 11,102.45, which is a 2.87% gain there on the index. And when you look at the Russell 2000, the Russell had about, 1,846.92, appreciating about 40.60. Remember, the Russell 2000 is for the smaller caps companies there on the stock exchange. And yeah, that was kind of like the winding up of the trades on Friday. Looking forward, we should expect something heavy from the tech companies, and Google, Amazon, and the rest. Definitely getting to impact the Nasdaq index as well there positively, hoping that the week will end in gains as well. We are also seeing that most of the companies on these indexes have already declared their third quarter earnings, and yeah, most of them look pretty not so good as by expectations, but still many of them have outperformed others on these particular indexes. And so we are looking forward to a week of intense activity on the US market, and a week of uncertainty as well, as now Elon Musk, the gentleman, the richest man in the world, has taken over Twitter, one of also the biggest social media platforms on the continent and also in the world. So let's look at now, coming back home, at the Uganda Securities Exchange and the Kenyan market, looking at what we had for the trades. Generally speaking, there was a contraction in the number of companies participating in trades, especially here in Uganda. Kenya maintained its performance, and we had still 49 companies participate, which was kind of like an average for last week in terms of the number of companies participating in these particular trades. The Ghana Stock Exchange continued to be stagnant and had nothing added to its all-share index. And when you look at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, it kind of declined about 737.83 points on its J203, which is the benchmark index there at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And this was a 1.1% decline in their performance for the day. Nairobi also declined about 1.20, and this was on their all-share index, which went down by 1.20 to about 128.43, and this was bringing them to a year-to-date loss of close to 22.85%, and their market capitalization was maintained at 2 trillion. When you look at, for example, Nigeria also continued to decline in performance at a 712.54 points decline there, at a 1.6% decline on the day's trades as well on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Zimbabwe was one of the lucky few stock exchanges that registered an appreciation at a 95.35 gain on their benchmark index, and that was a 0.64% gain in the day. When you look at Zimbabwe, their year-to-date looks positive, and I think it's one of the very few stock exchanges in Africa having a positive year-to-date performance on their, looking at their benchmark index. They have appreciated about 37.99% in terms of year-to-date on their benchmark index. And yesterday's trades also realized an addition of 95.35 points on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Coming back to Uganda, here at home, Uganda Stock Exchange also registered a gain on the all-share index, which is the benchmark, at a 2.79 point increase, and this was a 0.22% that was added onto our value here. Regarding the performance of this index, we had the index closed at 1,263.34%, and looking at the 1 week gain, it's currently at 0.68%, and an overall year-to-date loss of 11.08% is still being counted. Now, looking at the participation in the market, we had only particularly two companies participate in the trading, which, like I said, was a pretty much smaller number compared with the previous day, which we had still about 3, which was also not so good. But looking at these companies that participated still, we had Stanbic and MTN Uganda, with Stanbic coming out with the biggest volume of close to 306,800 shares, and MTN at 26,000 shares that were recorded on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Looking on the other hand at the local company index, which tracks the aggregate performance of the local stocks, that is the domestically listed companies, including MTN, SSEBALE, and the like, we had a rather maintenance of the number of points at 271.77 points. And we are now counting a 4-week gain of about 0.14% on the local company index, and a year-to-date loss of 16.29%, which we still have to kind of make up for before we end the year probably. But looking at the market outlook, I would say activity is not that high, because definitely of what we are going through as a country in terms of economic gains. Our GDP is also not doing that good, and so people are hesitant about how they are spending their money, especially with these investments in such asset classes like equities, which are quite volatile. And I would 100% agree with them. However, we must take caution and be very scrupulous in our investments, because sometimes these periods create opportunity that might never come back, or might come back but way late, when it's already too late for you. So I would advise that you get some hard-earned savings. Definitely, I know it's very, very difficult, and many people are trying to live by and get along with how the finances are turning out. But you can still spare some little money, even if it means a quarter of your earnings, and make yourself these investments. Get into the stock market and get to learn how it works, and make sure you're investing for the long term. Don't invest for the short term. Try as much as possible to avoid speculation, though of course sometimes people gain from it, but it is quite risky. And make sure you're investing right now for the long term. And I'm talking about 1 year from now, 18 months from now, and so on and so forth. Looking at the particular detailed performance here on the Uganda Stock Exchange, we had the top gainers amount to 3, and 2 losers alone. And most of these, actually all of them, were cross-listed companies from the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Nation Media Group gained about 1.9889% on its stock price, closing at 507.92, which was the topmost gainer. Equity Bank Limited also gained about 0.86%, closing at 1,482.87 Ugandan shillings. Whereas East African Breweries Limited closed the market with a 0.15% gain that was registered on the market. Jubilee Holdings Limited closed at 7,202.05 and closed as a bottom loser on the market after having lost close to 1.4% on the stock exchange. Centum lost about 0.24% and closed at 266.07 Ugandan shillings. And this was also registered as a particularly losing company. Now, these participants definitely did not have any activity on the market. As I already mentioned on the show before, you have cross-listed companies' stock prices move or shift or change based on factors more than demand and supply. We understand that the stock prices are determined by how much demand and supply is put on these stocks. However, when it comes to the cross listings, definitely factors like the foreign exchange rate come in and move the prices differently. Also, the activity of these companies on the domestic exchanges or the primary stock exchanges where they are listed definitely still impacts how these companies perform on these cross-listed stock exchanges. And that's what we're seeing currently on the market. We didn't have any trading on Nation Media Group. We didn't have trading on Equity or even East African Breweries, but their prices moved. And this is something you and I must always keep in mind. Like I mentioned, Stanbic and MTN, on the other hand, were participants, still by a smaller margin. Looking at the volume here, we had just 306,800 from Stanbic and about 26,000 shares from MTN. They are coming in as trades for the day. A particular contraction was registered in the volume, of course, that was traded, and as well as the turnover on the market. And looking at the total number of the total amount, the market value we had on the market, we had about just 11.2 million Ugandan shillings that were traded. Compared with the previous day, we had a 253% improvement in the volume and a 21% decline in the turnover, meaning at least the volumes were moved a little bit, but still in terms of turnover, there was a decline. And for starters, when we talk about the turnover, it is the total amount of money transacted on shares traded. In other words, you get the shares, multiply the shares that have been traded, and multiply by the share prices of the respective companies in order to come up with what we call the turnover on the market. And this is exactly what we have been looking at. But for new entrants into the market, and you want to know how you can be part of the action here at the Uganda Stock Exchange, quite simple. You want to buy yourself shares in MTN, in SSEBALE, in New Vision Printing and Publishing Company. Very simple. Grab your phone and dial *165#. That is if you're an MTN subscriber. And you go to option number 5, which is financial services, and then option number 7 for the Uganda Stock Exchange. You will be able to open an account. This account is called the Securities Central Depository Account, or SCD. Now, this SCD account gives you access to the markets, because you cannot access the markets without an account. So you can be able to open this account and get to start to buy shares. How do you buy shares? Very simple as well. You have stockbrokers that are licensed by the Capital Markets Authority. And these stockbrokers are 5 in number. At the moment, we have UAP Old Mutual, We also have Standard Bank Group Securities, SBG. We also have the cheaper technologies, which are the new entrants on the block, as well as Dyer and Blair Investments and Crested Capital. You can visit their websites and check out what they do and what they have to offer in terms of services and products. But basically, any of these can get you stocks from different companies on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And definitely they'll carry out a KYC to know their customer and get to invest on your behalf. The money doesn't go to the stock, rather to the stockbroker, but it goes direct to the exchange and gets to buy you shares for yourself, and you can track the movement of your shares on your phone as well. And stockbrokers do provide statements at the end of every single trading day to know how your stocks but particularly performed on that trading day. And so you be part of this action, and it doesn't matter your age. Of course, you must be of the age about 18 years and above to be able to participate with the national identification card. And those of you with that as well can go to Google and search for www.useeasyportal.com. This easy portal also was created to help you open an account, and you can do this on your own. And those who want the traditional way of doing things can still visit the stockbrokers' offices and get to consult on how to open an account on the Central Securities Depository Registry. And when you do this, definitely you will be part of the action. Now, how do you know which shares to buy? That entirely depends on your tastes and preferences, but also on the advice from the stockbroker or your financial advisor. You must buy stocks that are in line with your goals. Of course, financial goals and personal goals. You have goals maybe for long-term gain or for maybe a passive source of income that you would want to feed into your pockets, or for your children. You're buying shares for your children who are going to be maybe 20, 30 years from now, way older, and definitely get to gain from these shares. You can still do it. You can still get into the market right now and buy those particular shares for your children, for your siblings, for anyone that you would wish to buy them for. But you have, of course, to know the goals. The goals have to be very, very clear. And when it comes to the stock market, I've always emphasized to invest for a long term. Long term could be a year, a 2 year, maybe 2 year term, maybe 3 years, 5 years. But definitely when you invest for the long term, you kind of avert some of the risks that come with short-term investments. And that is very, very, very risky and crucial to any investor out there. Okay, we're going to take a quick breather. Remember, the show is brought to you by Altex East Africa. And after this quick breather, we return with another segment on the Nairobi Stock Exchange and how the performance was on Nairobi, as well as a summary of the Ugandan trade. Stay with us. We'll be right back.